Cup of tea. Oh, right. Tuesday the 19th of November 2024. So, in 3 days' time, it will have been 4 years since we took delivery of the tiny house. I was going to say for the first time then, but we've only taken delivery of it once, so that doesn't really make sense. But 4 years it's been. It was the 22nd of November 2020 it got delivered. We didn't actually move into the house until the 29th, which was the following week. I remember it was a Sunday, but it was the 22nd that the house got delivered. And yeah, I can't believe it's been 4 years since that day. I remember in the weeks leading up to the delivery of the house, we got sent some pictures of what it looked like in the factory, I suppose, that it was being built in. And yeah, we were getting really excited and couldn't wait for it to arrive. And it was like the longest 2 or 3 weeks ever. And now it's been 4 years that we've been living in it full time. And yeah, it's pretty crazy really how quickly time goes. But I thought I'd do just a quick update video, mainly because I think it was like 2 days ago, I suddenly realised it was almost 4 years. And I just kind of felt like I don't know, just kind of expressing what it's like to live in a tiny house in the UK. And yeah, 4 years in, we're still loving it. Can't really imagine going back to living in a normal house again. I've got a wash on at the moment over there, so if you're wondering what that noise is, it's the washing machine. It's just done a spin cycle. I think it will do another one in about 20 minutes. Maybe not that long, maybe before then, I don't know. But that's one thing that never wears off, is when the washing machine is going on a spin cycle, it shakes the whole house, which you obviously don't get in a normal house. So yeah, you kind of never get used to that, the house shaking when the wash is on. But I've got myself a nice cup of tea, which is still very hot at the moment. This is Clipper cup of tea for anyone who's interested, which is probably nobody. But I've never had Clipper tea before, but highly recommended. It's really good. So yeah, I've got a cup of tea. I've just taken the dogs out for the morning walk. It's raining at the moment. It's also going to get really cold this week. I think it's going to snow, or it's forecast to snow, not tomorrow but the day after. Although we don't usually get much snow in the south of England. I think it's going to snow mainly up north, but yeah, possibility of snow, but we'll see. But 4 years, yeah, pretty crazy. It's gone really fast. I remember when we very first got the house, it felt like, because we had it on a campsite as well, it felt like we were on holiday initially. So you know when you go away on a holiday, whether you're staying in a hotel or caravan, you're going camping or whatever, when you're there you're kind of in like a holiday mode, and because it's different from being at home, it's kind of quite exciting. And I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but quite often when I've been on caravan holidays, I've always felt like I could definitely live in a caravan all the time. The process of actually getting the tiny house, I'm not going to go too much into it, but we looked at canal boats, we looked at caravans, and then we kind of found the tiny house as kind of like a middle ground. So there were no canals near us, so we couldn't have a boat. Caravan was too small, and yeah, we kind of found the tiny house, and kind of the rest was history really. The first couple of weeks anyway were really exciting. Well, not even the first couple of weeks, I'd say like the first year, the whole thing was just really exciting. Felt like we were on holiday all the time. We did have a few sort of hiccups throughout the first winter. So because we got the tiny house delivered at the end of November, we were literally coming into winter, and that is kind of probably the worst time to do it, because the winter can be quite difficult to manage in the tiny house. I mean, we know how to do it now because we've done, what, 3 winters now? I think we're going into our 4th. So we know how kind of everything works. But that first winter, we didn't have a clue what we were doing, or how different a tiny house would be to living in a conventional house. So we had a lot of humidity problems. We had mould sort of cropping up in all the corners. Our underfloor heating broke. Oh, our water heater broke. Our lights upstairs have broken. Our water pump has broken, although we don't need that anymore because we're connected to the mains. We've got a composting toilet, which is quite unusual to have if you're not used to it. I actually don't like going in normal toilets. I prefer going in a composting toilet. But yeah, we had a few hiccups along the way, but generally speaking, the first year was really good fun, really exciting. And I think that kind of extended into the second year, but maybe not so much. And now 4 years in, it just kind of feels like home now. That kind of novelty is not really there anymore. you don't even really think about the fact that you're living in a really small space, because it's just the normal, and it's just your home, it's just the way it is. And it's quite funny actually, because when Joss comes here, Joss doesn't actually sleep in the house anymore. We got him his own van, and he kind of basically stays in that now. Well, he sleeps in it and plays on his Xbox in there. He comes in the house to like eat and stuff like that. But yeah, he basically lives in his van now. But when Joss goes back to his mum's house, his mum's just got like a normal house, or if he goes to my mum's house, which he does quite often as well, we often ask him what it feels like to go from being in a normal house to coming here and not only living in the tiny house but being in a van as well. Like, is that change really weird or unusual? And he says he doesn't even think about it, it just is what it is. And it's actually quite funny because he lives with us pretty much full time now. So yeah, I guess you could say that he prefers living in a van and a tiny house than a conventional house. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the house just feels normal. And I guess 4 years in, the novelty of being in a tiny house and the kind of excitement and the adventure of it has kind of worn off now. But we're not bored of it, we're not sick of it, we're not itching to get back into a normal house with more space. It's just become a home, and if anything, I think we've kind of grown into it. And I think we love it now more than we ever have done, really, and appreciate it for what it is. There are a few things that we've struggled with over the years, and I was thinking about doing another pros and cons video, and it has been requested. I haven't really got around to it because I've been really busy doing other things, but I just want to go over a couple of the bad things, because I could talk about all the good things about living in a tiny house just like for the rest of the day. But there are a few bad things. So the obvious thing is obviously limited space. So you live in a tiny house, you don't have as much space. If you don't include the upstairs, so I think the internal space downstairs is about 18 feet by 8. So it's around about 150, 160 square feet downstairs, which is really small. That's probably smaller than your average bedroom, I guess. And that's got like everything in it. I mean, we do have the upstairs as well, so I guess you could kind of add on to that. So I don't know, let's just say 200 square feet, like the overall footprint of the house. It's very small. Everything is kind of crammed into that space, so we don't have things like 12-volt appliances or anything like that. It is as conventional as a normal house. The only difference is we literally have just less space around everything. So I'm sitting at the dining table, I've got the kitchen behind me, I can touch that, I can touch the sofa in the living room, the bathroom's over there, washing machine's down there, oven's there. You know, I can almost touch everything in this room just from this like one point. Although that is restricting in many ways, I also think it's a really good thing, because it means that you have to be mindful of all the things that you introduce into your house. So you can't just buy loads of things and put them in the house, because there's literally nowhere for them to go. So having less space certainly forces you really to have less things, which I think is always a good thing. Another thing as well, which I touched on earlier, was humidity. So because it's a small space, this goes for caravans, this goes for camper vans, motorhomes, everything. If you are living in a small space and you're cooking, you're washing, having a shower, bath, whatever, hanging up laundry, just being in it and breathing, you're introducing a lot of warm, moist, humid air into the space. And in the winter, when it's cold, the external walls get cold, and if there's too much moisture and too much humidity, then that condenses on the cold surfaces, and it can create mold and cause all kinds of different problems. So you really need to keep on top of humidity in a small space. We've got a dehumidifier. We've still got the same one that we bought 4 years ago. I think the first month we lived in here we didn't have one, or maybe even the first 6 weeks, because we didn't really understand humidity or anything, and we just had mold everywhere. So now we have the dehumidifier, and we pretty much run it almost all winter long. Even throughout the summer, sometimes if it's not really hot, we do have it on just to suck the moisture out of the air and prevent condensation and mold. I've actually got it on at the moment in the bathroom because I'm hanging up some wet clothes from the walk this morning. I've got my coat in there and stuff. But humidity is a real problem in a small space, and yeah, you need to have a dehumidifier to kind of suck it out of the air, try and keep it dry. And you also need to try and keep the corners of cold walls clear and ventilated, because otherwise you will get pockets of humid air in these cold spots and they will create mould, so you really need to keep on top of it. But you know, this is our 4th winter now. The last 2 winters we've been absolutely fine. We haven't had any mould at all, so just manage it and it's fine. It's not a problem. Although it is a bit annoying to have the dehumidifier just kind of in the way all the time, but I guess that's just a bit of a compromise, isn't it? So another thing I wanted to talk about is, again, related to the winter. It does get a bit cold in here. It's all right at the moment. I think it's about 5 degrees outside, so it's not really cold. It's absolutely fine in here though. We've got underfloor heating, which is great actually. It keeps the centre part of the floor, the only bit we really walk on actually, keeps it nice and warm for your feet. If you don't have that underfloor heating on, the floor gets really cold, you get cold feet, and then I don't know, you kind of seem to get a lot colder. We also have a heated towel rail in the bathroom, which is really handy for drying things. Put the dehumidifier in there, and then you've got the towel rail, just chuck the laundry in there, and it is almost like a drying room. It's really good. So we've got the towel rail, the underfloor heating, and then if it does get really cold, then we can either turn the oven on and open the door. I've done that before. Or we have got an electric fan heater, which I think is in the boot of the car at the moment, because I haven't needed it yet, that we can turn on just to kind of boost it up a bit. But generally speaking, unless it gets down to sort of like 1 degree, 0 degrees, it's quite manageable in here. You just do normal things, put an extra layer on, grab a blanket, something like that, before you put extra heating on. But it can get cold, particularly if it's sort of below 0. But yeah, just chuck the oven on, put the heater on, grab a blanket, you know, usual things. We do also make use of the oven more in the winter as well, so when it is cold we might cook a jacket potato or a tray bake or something in the oven, because then not only are you cooking your dinner, but you're warming the house up as well. So yeah, that's something to be mindful of as well. It can get quite cold, but you just need to manage it a bit more than you would in a house. You know, we don't have central heating, so you know, you can't just crank it up. We've got a thermostat for the underfloor heating, but the underfloor heating is either on or it's off. It won't warm the whole house if it's cold, so you need to kind of boost it up a bit. And the last bad thing I wanted to talk about was really, this is like the main thing about living in a tiny house. I've had so many people ask me about this, so many people talk to me about this, and I think it's the #1 reason why more people don't live in tiny houses and caravans. And I think it literally boils down to the fact that it's really difficult to find somewhere to keep it. So we're really lucky, and I say this, I feel so, well, we all feel really lucky to be where we are. Here goes the washing machine. But we're currently on private land. We're renting kind of like a plot. We've got mains power, we've got mains water connection. Here we go. I don't know if you can see the house shaking a little bit. Sometimes the pots and pans start crashing and banging, but I don't think they're going to today. Oh, that's the front door. But yeah, finding a place to keep the house is really difficult. So we did start out on a campsite. The only reason we actually got the tiny house in the first place is because we got the go-ahead from a local campsite to us to say that we could keep it there. So we went and lived in the campsite for a bit. We also moved and lived in Becky's mum and dad's garden. Lived there for 6 months, and then we moved back to the campsite again. And then the campsite was closing down because they wanted to renovate the whole place and build sort of holiday lodges and that sort of thing, which they haven't actually done yet, because I think they got their planning permission refused, which I think is a good thing, because they were trying to develop greenbelt land just for their own sort of financial gain, which I found quite, I don't know what the word is, but I didn't agree with it, let's just put it that way. So I'm quite glad that their planning permission got refused. So yeah, the campsite's actually still running. It's not too far away from here, but we've been where we are now for 2 years, and we literally pay £600 a month. And that includes our council tax, our electricity, our water, everything is included in that. The land that we're on has residential permission, so we're allowed to be here. We're not skirting with the laws on planning permission or anything like that. We're literally allowed to be here. But we've never found anywhere else or heard of anywhere else that has this same kind of setup. So there's actually, I think there's 8 of us here. The other 7 of our neighbours all live in static caravans, so we're the only ones in a tiny house. But there's 8 of us here. We've all got our own kind of plot. We've all got mains power, mains water. It's like a, I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's almost like just a residential caravan community sort of thing. And it's kind of a bit unheard of, really. I don't really know how it came about, how it got its permission. I don't really know any of the ins and outs of it, but all I do know is that we've been here for 2 years. We pay £600 a month, which is next to nothing really when you compare it to what rents are at the moment and mortgages and everything. Yeah, we just feel so lucky to be here. It's just kind of a bit crazy really. Let's finish this tea. Oh. There we go. Cool, a cup of tea really warms you up. I think I might have to take my jumper off. Oh, I actually think my camera has moved slightly because of the vibrations of the washing machine. So let's move it back this way. There we go. I think that's kind of where we started. 16 minutes to go. I probably should have waited for the wash to finish, to be honest. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say about Tiny House. If there's anything specific you want to ask, then just leave a comment in the comment section. But future plans, so we're currently in the process now of trying to save up some money. I've taken on a part-time job, so during the week I'm studying at the moment, and I've got a part-time job at the weekend selling fruit and veg at a market, which is actually quite good fun. I really enjoy it. But we're trying to save up some money. We're shooting for £1,000 a month, which is £12,000 a year. That's kind of our target. And we're hoping to stay here for maybe 2 or 3 more years until Joss is a bit older. But the idea is at the moment is I think we're going to try and save some money so we can buy our own land potentially. Although with the difficulties of planning permission, we might end up having to buy a house with some land. So then we don't have to like go through like the whole planning procedure thing. The issue with that though is obviously houses are much more expensive than just buying land. But if you can't live on land unless it's got a house on it, then you kind of don't really have much choice, do you? But I think the idea is we're going to try and find somewhere that's got like a derelict house. This is kind of what we're thinking. We don't even need to have lots of land, to be honest with you. So a derelict house with either some land or a large enough garden that we can kind of enclose it, have the dogs run around, grow some vegetables, maybe have some chickens, and try and kind of go down that self-sufficiency route. That's kind of what the goal is. Where that's going to be, we're not really too sure. We're currently living south of England, not too far from London. It's really expensive around here, so we're going to have to move further away. Scotland or Northern England is somewhere we might like to go. Wales is also affordable, more affordable. So that could be an option. But the general idea is we want to buy a derelict house with some land or a large garden that we can take the tiny house to and carry on living in the tiny house with a view to possibly renovating the house at some point. But if we have the tiny house next to the derelict house, we don't need planning permission to have it there. And then we can carry on living in the tiny house on our own land and kind of have a bit of a small holding, I suppose, and just kind of enjoy our own space really. So that's kind of the idea. Whether that will come to fruition or not, we don't know. Anything can happen in the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, hopefully if we can save £1,000 a month, then even in 2 years time, that's about £25,000, well, plus what we've already got, so it'd probably be about £30,000 we'll have. And also buying a property, you can get a mortgage on it as well, whereas if you buy land you can't get a mortgage because there's no collateral. So even if we found some land that we could live on, we might not be able to afford it because we can't get a mortgage to buy it, and it'd probably be quite expensive. So yeah, I think the derelict house route is probably the best one. But we want to stay in the tiny house, which I think is the main thing. We want to carry on living in here because we love living in a tiny house. We just need somewhere to keep it of our own, and if that means we have to get a small mortgage to buy some form of house with a bit of land, then so be it. But I think that's most likely going to be further north, possibly into Scotland, maybe Wales, but certainly not anywhere near London, that's for sure. I think that was all. Washing machine is almost done, so perfect timing. Like I said, if you've got any questions, just leave them down below. I'll try and answer anything that you want to know. Christmas is coming up, so we might be going away after Christmas for a week. I think Joss might be going back to his mum's, and we were thinking of maybe shooting over to Wales for a week, possibly, but I guess we'll kind of see what happens with that. No plans yet. But I hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and maybe see you after Christmas, if not before. And yeah, have a lovely day.